Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Wealth Equation. Now, today we have a guest called Susan Ayton. Now, Susan's joining us, everybody, to tell us all about Ayton Global Research, otherwise known as AGR. We're going to find out all about this brilliant business in a few minutes' time from Susan directly. But just quickly, Susan, just to say, 30 years in business, congratulations. You are a global business. You own your own in-house software system. Your mission is to make every research a resounding commercial success. It's a great story. I mean, International Business Awards, Family Business of the Year, Government R&D grants, internship, ISO accreditation. So you're the founder and the MD of this brilliant company. Tell us all about it.
But no, I mean, it doesn't sound like me at all.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about it.
Who is this imposter?
Yeah, there is definitely that element to it. You kind of hear it and you think, yeah, I recognize this, I recognize that, but I don't really put the whole
Yeah.
together. And I think most people who are in business are very detailed. We tend to work with our nose to the grindstone and we don't really see the overview. I think that's something that I find in common with other entrepreneurs. And then when you read it all back, you think, well, I don't recognize any of that, but it is all true. And it is my 30th year in business. I feel very old.
Oh, come on. No. Definitely can't go there. We can't go there. So what brought you to the point where you had your entrepreneurial seizure then in 95 and you made the decision to set this business up? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Poverty is ever so
Poverty.
simple. If you can't go any further down, you have to go up.
Wow. Isn't
My
that interesting?
background's in education, and I was holding down 3 teaching jobs and bringing up 2 children at the time single-handedly, and then now I have a third. But yeah, it was a case of I need to give up some of my teaching, which is actually quite well paid,
Mhm.
because you can't always pay all of your bills even on part-time teaching salary. And this started to pay. And I remember being really, really frightened about giving up my monthly salaries from these different occupations in the education sector. I was in further education.
Okay.
And it was really frightening. But yeah, it was all driven by poverty. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Sort of work with me on this, like, because there's people watching this that will be totally understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I'm kind of struggling for cash. I'm not making the money.
Mm.
I'm working for somebody else. They appear to have loads of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up my own business.
Well, I kind of got dragged into this through my teaching career, and it was a case of actually weighing up the finances and saying, I'm actually making more out of this than I am from teaching. So I
Oh,
was
so
doing it concurrent with my
you did
part-time teaching initially,
in parallel, yeah.
uh,
Okay, of course.
in parallel, and then it just came to the point where I could definitely earn more money from this than what I could earn from
You
teaching.
transition, yeah.
And so there was that time where I had to make the decision to go solo with this and this only,
Mm.
and really make a go of it, so that it could scale up. And yeah, it was very frightening. I borrowed as much money as my mortgage was to write our first piece of software,
I, I
and
was
that
going
was
to
a big
ask.
step.
I was going to ask you the question. Forgive me. Software. You mentioned it in our preamble before the session started. Um, Now, do you mind me asking what your subject matter was in further education? What were you teaching?
I was teaching hair and beauty therapy, holistic therapy,
Wow.
anatomy and physiology, and business. And
Oh,
funnily enough,
okay.
it's the knowledge of all of that that enabled me to really understand consumer behavior, the
Right.
beauty industry in general, and
I see.
how I could piece together some research
Uh-huh.
for the cosmetics and toiletries sector. I happened to be approached by the director of a contract manufacturer who
Mm,
felt that my students at the time would give some value added to the research on prototypes. So I approached my principal. This was at City of Bath College. Luckily enough, he was ex big industry, something like ICI, but don't quote me on that. And he really valued industrial representation in the education sector. So I approached him and said, look, I've got a company who want to test prototypes on our students, and I can't do that in my contact time. do you mind if I do it in my non-contact time?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes. If it had
100%.
been another principal or 5 years earlier, the answer definitely would have been
Yeah.
no.
Would have been
And
no.
that's where it all started. And then I
Isn't
went
that
to teach in a male prison where
interesting?
we couldn't take things in at all. And so that was one of the teaching contracts where
Mm.
I kind of felt, look, you know, if I'm going to make a go of this, I've got to just go with the business now, because I couldn't duplicate it within other education establishments. Clearly, you don't want to be testing razors in an all-male prison. So I had this sort of really varied career and background in the education sector, but I still feel that it was my qualifications in hair and beauty and holistic therapy
Gave you the
that
foundation.
enabled me to add value to the research on prototypes of cosmetics and toiletries. And I
Fascinating.
still talk about
So,
it a lot today.
so how do you translate that background into the ability to build a piece of software? I'm fascinated by that.
Mm. So, bad behaviour of volunteers. So, as we gave products out free of charge to students, they behaved really well. When we didn't have enough students and we started to give them out more locally via a network, I think at my peak locally before I had software, we had 22 distributors. Some people didn't behave very well. They didn't fill the questionnaire in on time, or they didn't seem to be very attentive with the questionnaire. And
Mm.
so I kind of had the aha moment when I thought, you know, all of this can be put into coding, not that I'm the coder.
No.
So I designed some route maps that would take volunteers through signing up online, training in what can be done and what can't be done, i.e., you don't have to say nice things about a product to get more products. You can just be very honest. That's what we want, is honesty.
Absolutely.
And also, we could put some algorithms in that mitigated against people racing through questionnaires and
Mm.
just scoring them six,
Just
six, 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 or whatever they wanted to do. So there are behavioural algorithms within the software. And then I had a chance meeting in the field over a glass of Pimm's with somebody who happened to be in statistics, and decided that I wanted to be the first person to have real-time statistical analysis. And that really ruffled the academic world, because, as you know, statistical analysis really means that that's your safeguard against there being a different result the next time around. So
Mhm.
how could it be real time when the next time around it might give a different result? So there was a whole hoo-ha about that.
Mm.
But I won a research and development grant from the British government because that was my idea. It worked. There were conditions put on it. And so, as far as I'm aware, we're still the only company that does that. And
So
I think if you were to print out the algorithm, it's pages long. It's still quite unique.
fascinating stuff. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking before we got going, we used the L word, didn't we? There was the luck word came into the
A
discussion,
lot of that.
and we were sort of having a little bit of an intro together and getting to know each other a little bit. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, yeah, I think Susan understands that there is no such thing as luck. Luck is simply an outcome of the pieces that you put on the jigsaw table, yourself. And actually, if you think about it, for everybody listening and watching, it's quite cool because what you've just mentioned is a principle that was pivotal.
Yes.
You bump into somebody in a field
Hmm.
that's pivotal. Um, you
And
could put
approach.
these things down to luck, but the reality is they're not, are they? What are you doing then as a CEO of your own business? What are you doing that's creating these opportunities, Susan?
So I think the luck is who you meet, and I think the bit that isn't luck is what you do with it, what you do with these circumstances. And so the luck in the first instance was meeting a guy called Sterling Crew, who currently at the time was the CEO of the contract manufacturer,
Yeah,
who wanted my
it's about that.
students
Yeah.
to be able to test products. The principal who was in position at the time, the chap who owned a statistical analysis company. So yeah, there is. I mentioned the aha moment, and that's where luck converts into something else, isn't it? So you have the luck of these conspiring contacts, and then the aha moment. You could also have that and have a glass of wine and think, well, that was a great idea, and now I'm going to go back to whatever I used to do. But I think where it converts from luck into something a bit more dynamic um, is when you decide to invest. and you think, I believe in my idea. I know that this is going to work. You have to have 100% confidence, and then you borrow the money if you don't have it, which I didn't, to put those factors together and make a business.
And where does this confidence and this drive, this obviously clear conviction in your direction and your vision and concept, where does it come from? I mean,
I think it comes from listening skills, and I think having been around the contract manufacturing staff
yeah.
and understanding what their challenges were, where the gap was, having
Mm.
good listening skills is key to any success in business.
Picking up.
So utilizing the toolkit, which might be the people, the chance, the opportunity, utilizing all of those skills and putting them together with 100% confidence is because you've listened to what the problems are, and you know that those problems are replicated across the whole of the contract manufacturing base in the UK as
Mhm.
well as globally. Where other luck came in was that a lot of my customers globalized within about 10 years of me being in business, which meant that I
Okay.
needed to convert my programming from being just in English to being multilingual. So
Okay.
we're in 25 languages, and we can introduce any language that we want at a click of a button. And that's another thing that we won another research and development grant for. And that's another bit of luck, how lucky that the government were interested in giving us tax breaks at a time where probably I wouldn't have been able to afford the development just from the profits of the business. So yeah, there's a lot of luck involved, but it is what you do with it that makes
Yeah,
the difference.
I hear you. I hear you. I think we could have a very interesting conversation about the definition of luck maybe at some stage. But let's park that one. Leave it where it is. I think for me, what you're really putting your finger on is the conversion of opportunity, right?
Yes.
You're winning in business for 30 years and building
Mm.
a global operation is not something to be taken lightly. That is a serious achievement. A, to last, to be successful consistently over that period, but B, to become also a global operation. World famous in Shepton Mallet, but actually you're world famous, right? So that's
Within small pockets of industry, I remember going to do a lecture at a trade show in India, and people kind of knew who I was before I got there. And okay, I was on the program and I put myself out there on LinkedIn and places like that. But
good.
they really seemed to understand my business model, and they would mention other people in common. I mean, although we're global, it's actually a very small industry, cosmetics and toiletries. There's a lot of headhunting. So as my clients globalized, a lot of the people that I worked with or worked for in the UK were headhunted to go and work in Australia, Indonesia, Japan, China. And then so suddenly they kind of take my model with them. What's always astounded me is why nobody else is doing this 30 years on. I still can't believe that. I can't get my head around why people aren't doing things the way that I'm doing it. For sure, other people run a similar business to mine, but they're not doing it my way, and I just find that odd. But long may that last.
Maybe they have a different vision to you, a different methodology, or it's very interesting.
We're not in the most profitable part of research, handling prototypes, getting them through customs.
I see.
So other people who might have software similar to mine are probably focusing more on online research. Companies like Mintel, YouGov. We actually have a bigger database than most of those sorts of companies. We have 450,000 volunteers in the UK alone, for example,
Wow.
which does make us the biggest in our field. But because we
Congratulations.
choose to handle prototypes, because of
Yeah.
my background and my affection for the hair and beauty
Fantastic.
industry, I guess other people are just focusing on what makes them more profit. And for sure, that's just online research.
Yeah, yeah, corporations chasing a different outcome, right?
I
Interesting.
think so.
There's millions of questions in my mind flowing through here. T- for the person running a small garage or a cafe or something that is very localized, in its identity, what would you say is the number one sort of facet of your character that was essential to success? You've mentioned listening. Look somewhere else. What
Mm.
what do these guys out there and girls need to take on board? What can they learn from you, Susan?
You have to consciously be glass half full.
Okay.
And I think when you recognize that you're not, you need to do things that help you to get back into that position.
Yeah.
So the ever optimist in me, and being true to that vision is really, really integral to going through all of the challenges, the difficult times, the sad times, the tired times.
Yeah.
You really have to believe in being glass half full and very optimistic. And I think as soon as you let people pick that away from you through perhaps attitudes that they bring to the table,
Ooh.
you have to kind of, I wouldn't say bring them up to your level because it's not an up and a down. You have to bring them along
Mm.
into your way of thinking, and that that can be quite tiring. It requires exercise. It requires a good diet. It requires a lot of fun to compensate. And I think if you can get all of your pots full. And they're the right pots, then you have to arrange those pots to maintain that glass half full. And as
So
soon as something really gets on top of that, you cease to be a leader, and people do like to be around a leader.
do you know, as you're talking to me, I'm visualizing these pots and I'm thinking, what a fabulous way to describe how to build a winning business model, a team, an effective team, you know. Leadership, though, was where I was. I'm like, yeah, Susan's a leader. Yeah.
Not
So
always a good one. I mean, we're
what does that mean?
human. As I say, we have sad times. We have real things going on. I've had an awful lot of bereavements in my life. I've been
Yeah.
poverty struck at times because of overinvestment, and cars don't start up on the drive when I'm meant to probably have a new one, but I've chucked it into software. It's not all easy. Of course, it's not. And I've had a lot of illness. I've had a craniotomy 10 years ago, a big car crash. So it's not all a bed of roses, but it is the way that you deal with it, isn't it? And I think minimizing the bad, maximizing the luck that we have, comparing ourselves with other models. I've traveled to Sierra Leone, for example, very poverty stricken parts of India. It's just reminding ourselves that these are first world problems. These are not third world problems. These are first
Absolutely.
world problems. And if you
Absolutely.
can keep yourself in that context, I think it really helps.
Did you always have a vision for where you are now? When you first started out, did you see 30 years ahead?
My mum always said that. Did you know it was going to be this successful? And the quiet answer was, well, yeah.
Mm.
Because for me it was a no-brainer. It was obvious how to put this together. There was an element of 3D thinking, and I always described
Yeah.
it as looking at a piece of DNA,
Mm.
where you can kind of see the whole coding, the whole way that every rule in my software is going to work in favor of industry,
Mm.
but not to forget in favor of our many, many volunteers around the globe. So 750,000 volunteers globally.
Wow.
What's in it for them? That's got to be important, right? If they're not going to get free products to test, they're just going to be doing surveys for the sake of pin money, and that's not what we're about.
Okay.
So yeah, I just saw the whole of the moon. I think is probably the best way to describe it. It's just, and it wasn't about wealth, and I think that's another important thing. It was an academic
Yeah.
need to fulfill the concepts. So I've been surprised that it's generated wealth.
Okay.
Um, I
Mm.
remember at one point being slightly disappointed at how easily that came, and
Mm.
then that became a problem because you have to do something with all this money.
Absolutely.
And
That's
so
an
I kind of,
interesting point, right?
yeah, yeah. When you do the obvious thing, you either save it or you invest in something else. So I sort of made a small property portfolio, and that's now almost unmanageable. And it is small, but rules change, government rules change, and it makes you
Absolutely.
think, well, maybe that's not for me now. So
Mm.
fluidity is another important factor in success.
The ability to ebb and move with the tide. Yeah.
Yes.
So let's just circle back there a little bit because you mentioned the W word. The name of the podcast is the wealth equation. So wealth is not defined purely by money. Wealth's defined by, in our opinion, a balance between financial wealth, time wealth, and
Mm.
health wealth. So the balance across the equation creates the outcome that people typically are craving. But you described a few minutes ago moments where you've been wealth poor, financially, time, and health. So at stages, Susan, you've been poor on all three, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still am.
Isn't that?
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. I'm glad you say wealth isn't about money, because I've never got any. I'm just cash poor,
Asset
time
rich.
poor, and wealthy. But I think that is back to the nerds, where I'm more interested in the coding, and whether I'm making a success of the latest way to tweak my software. You can get quite obsessed by it, or not really realise what's going on around you. But going back to this equation about health and wealth and time management and things like that. Of
Yeah,
course, the first thing that goes when you're stressed is your own health. And
yeah.
all the first world diseases, the high blood pressure, the migraines, the insomnia, and things like that. Nobody's immune to all of that. The real challenge is elevating your health to the level where you can actually influence it. And
Mm.
you're the first thing that comes last, kind of thing, when
Yeah,
the
yeah.
stress is on and more hours are needed, or more things
Absolutely.
are worrying you. And that's
Brilliant.
the one that I think we all find difficult to raise up, as our own health and the importance of it.
So I mean, I think you nail it there when you say that you become last in the queue, don't you? Whereas in reality, you are the business. The business is a reflection of Susan Ayton. There's no doubt. So if you're not taking care of yourself, the business will struggle. So, what when times were difficult, please give us a little insight. How did you make sure that you were taking care of yourself? Or were you not taking care of yourself? I mean, be honest with us. Tell us.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm a family business, and that's one of the things that I won an award for. And so my three children have lived and slept and drank and eaten the business, ever since they were in nappies, more or less. So,
God bless you.
when I was really ill after a car crash and a brain tumor and a craniotomy,
Wow.
that was 10 years ago now. My family completely supported me. My youngest was 11 years old, and my oldest was 23. And then the one in the middle, my son, was 21.
Wow.
And we all, well, they all stepped in and did everything that they needed to do to support me through that.
Amazing.
I have to say, I took my laptop into hospital and I was at work in recovery. And that's the best way that you get over a brain operation. You just practice and things. But had it not have been for my family, and I think that's why we won the Family Business of the Year, I
Wonderful.
probably couldn't have, I wouldn't be talking to you now, to be honest with you, Alice. I would have been long gone. But my son took over the business from the age of about 21 to until 2 years ago,
Okay.
and did an amazing job of ensuring conformance was there. The ISOs that you mentioned, he was a big integral part of introducing them.
Wonderful.
My eldest daughter was really customer facing. She took some time out in Australia, Indonesia, and so on, but she still met with clients out there on her gap year. And my youngest, who was 11 at the time, did lots to cook and help and clean and shop and things. So I couldn't have been luckier. Again, it goes back to luck, doesn't it? Lucky I had children. Lucky the children knew about the business, and lucky they wanted to be engaged in helping.
I
Um,
would say that you're wealthy in many, many different guises, one of this clearly being the family. But Susan, I have to say, from my perspective as the outside listening and looking in, yeah, I don't think you're lucky at all. I think that these people and this family is a reflection of the woman that you are, the businesswoman that you are. What you've done here is
I don't know if they'd say
is yeah.
that, but
Well, let's say it as it is. You're an example of how to do it. So, um, not easy, by the way. Family businesses are tricky, aren't they? Can we stay there for a minute? What are you gonna? Are you visualizing your exit? Are you planning your exit? Do you know when and how to
yeah,
get out?
I don't know about exit, because I can't imagine not being involved in my business at all.
Right.
But I've got a number of investors who are quite interested in acquiring shares in the company and things like that at the moment. Not actually always in my sector. I did
Uh-huh.
try to lead the company into other sectors.
Right.
And one of them was actually the assessment of film and comedy and how that might translate around the world. And this
Right.
was at a time when Aardman were talking about doing a deal with Pixar,
Mm.
with
Okay.
I think it was Wallace and Gromit, and I could again just have that aha moment. It's like, oh, our volunteers could look at snippets of script,
What a good
bits
idea.
of film footage, and just see, would people in Wisconsin know what Wensleydale cheese is? Would they find that funny? Surely
Yeah.
not. And I kind of worked out a way of assessing people's sense of humor without asking them what they thought their sense of humor was, because not everybody would admit to their real sense of humor. So I worked out a way of doing that, and then of course Aardman burnt down, and we kind of lost that opportunity. So anyway, there are people who are interested in my software
Okay.
for other sectors. My software is like a Rubik's cube, the
Yeah.
staff
Yeah.
kind of sit in the middle of it, and different faces work with the volunteers or with the
Okay.
clients. So it's a really versatile tool. But yeah, I
Fantastic.
would like to be able to explore other industries, but through partners.
Mm.
I like my industry. I'm
Yeah, I can
passionate
see that.
about it, but I don't necessarily want to be a specialist in film. We do tests on automotive and fashion items as well, but it's not my background. So
So, are you saying to me then that you intend to drive for freedom of choice in terms of making the business perform to such a degree that Susan can pick and choose when she's here, what she's doing, where she's going? What are you aiming for that level of business ownership?
if I'm brutally honest with you, I've always done that.
Ah,
I've always done it because it's a cyber business, if you like. My
yeah,
deal to self is that I'll develop trade in the country I want to visit.
right.
When I do a
That
trade
could
show, I'll make sure that I have half of the time sightseeing, and that was my deal to self. So going back to your mental well-being, even when I was up in Bradford, visiting a client in Bradford, I made sure that I took time out to see the National Photographic and Film Museum there, just to kind of enrich my experience. If it was London, I'd go to the V&A.
mm,
If it was Milan, then I'd make sure that I saw all of the lovely cathedral and everything there. So everywhere I went, firstly, I wanted to take my family, and so they're well travelled on account of this. And secondly, we've just seen the great things to see in the world.
um,
Otherwise, why would I be doing it? I think I realised a few years in that
yeah.
if I'm not careful, I could just see every industrial estate. And then
Huh.
30 years in, where would I be? I wouldn't know if I was in Books in Switzerland or whether I was in Luton.
I mean,
So that was a really early strategy to kind of keep me engaged in travel.
it's
Um,
interesting. It's relevant to say that you've been treading the wealth equation line all the while, haven't you? So money, time, and health. It's the three aspects of this conversation have been prevalent in your vision since that, which is very unusual. I mean, but of course, it's the cyber business, the tech
yeah,
aspect allows you to be very agile, and I get that. That's very cool. But when you're running a garage with six mechanics in Shepton Mallet or somewhere, it's much harder to be that flexible. But it is what it is. So, tell me about planning. How do you approach the subject of business plan?
I don't.
You know what? If I'd have been a
Probably
betting
not
man,
the
I would have
answer you
followed
want to hear.
you. Yeah,
I don't plan in a kind of paperwork strategic way.
yeah.
I have an awful lot of irons in the fire, and I learn about resources that I might be able to use.
Mm.
And then I draw upon them. So, for example, well, I suppose you could call it planning. For example, in February this year, I started to look at all of the AI tools that I've been shying away from.
Mm.
One of them, for example, being Fixer, which manages your inbox, creates drafts, and then you approve them and off they go, or you adapt them.
Hmm.
Um, so I find it quite frightening, but at the age of nearly 60, who wants to learn a whole new raft of AI? Not me really, but I'm aware that it's a do or die situation. So I started
Yeah.
to learn. I've probably got about 40 or 50 apps that I've assessed. I haven't kind of planned to put each one in place in this month and this month. You just become aware intuitively when something's needed. So, for example, there's now a really good model for an app to manage all of your ISOs.
Yeah.
And I know that, the ISO 27001, there are new standards coming in next year. So, somewhere deep down, I think, I'll just kind of wait until I have to do it.
You
Um,
are a rare beast. You are a rare beast. So if you were
I'm sure not.
if you were to if you were to speak to somebody running a more conventional bricks based business,
Mm.
not clicks as it were, how would you encourage them to navigate business success, the wealth equation, vis-a-vis planning? I mean, because clearly you are mentally, you are intellectually, you're clearly a very capable human being that's able to navigate without the traditional constructs of plans. Get that totally. I would have put money on that, by the way. I knew you were going to say that. But what would you say to somebody running a more conventional business? How do you think they should approach planning?
I think the same applies, to be honest. Years ago, I used to be in the motor trade over in East Anglia,
Okay.
but it was my then husband's business. And so I understand about new equipment and investment, and I understand about changes in MOT procedures and things like that. So I kind of get that trade. And it's a good one to pick upon because all the parallels are actually there.
Hmm.
All the parallels are there. Every business needs IT to start with. Every business will benefit from the efficiencies of IT. It doesn't matter whether you're a hairdresser or a mechanic or plumber. It doesn't matter.
Mm.
Apps and planning in terms of cyber planning, your visibility online, all of that is just so
Yeah, yeah.
important. So I think it's keeping abreast of the younguns, as they say in Somerset. We need to keep abreast of what the younguns can do. We need to have some sort of vocabulary for it. And that's what I struggle with is, when you start with IT, you need a whole vocabulary. So, for example, one new word in my vocabulary from trying to suss out AI and how I can apply it was funnels. And I didn't really understand what a funnel is. And of course, a funnel is about how you channel new customers
Absolutely.
through
Yeah.
lots of automated questions to get them to sign up to whatever you do, whether it's your next MOT or your next study with me. So funnels, that became a thing. I needed to learn what the word funnel meant. How did it apply? So, but extending your vocabulary and becoming competent to the degree where you can have a conversation about the way in which AI can help is fundamental. You can't even ask the questions if you don't have the vocabulary.
Do
So
you, do you have a senior leadership team around you, like a classical financial director and a non-executive and so on?
no, no, we don't. We went down that route probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where we had a sort of middle management team. We didn't really scale up sufficient to warrant it, and unfortunately, AI has now absorbed most of those roles.
Mm.
So we're in the process of streamlining the roles that our current team have. We've gone from a team of about 20 to around about 10
Okay.
through mostly through natural erosion.
Yeah.
Um, and that is because of AI. I read somewhere that I think 45% of jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And I was horrified and personally upset and horrified when you find it's happening to your own company.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good at my age. It really doesn't. I have lost a lot of sleep over it, and it's like a grief. It
Yeah.
puts a knot in my stomach. But I don't know what the alternatives are. I really don't know what the alternatives
Well,
are.
the one thing that we all have to live with and we can't push back against is change, right? I mean, you live
Mm,
in Somerset, and I'm guessing that couple of hundred years ago, apples were being picked off the trees in a very different way to what they are today.
mm,
It just is inevitable, isn't it, that technology will. advanced. But at the same time, you're absolutely right, Susan. You're the first person on this podcast to bring it. AI often comes into the conversation, but you're the first person to speak so directly about the fact that AI inevitably is going to replace, roles and ultimately people in business. And it's, for a tech business, I guess you are very susceptible to that.
Well, one of the lectures that I was at the Royal College of Surgeons earlier on this year, which was a summit from a number of different researchers, was actually about how AI can imitate human beings in research. So if, for example, 70% of people have answered a questionnaire, AI could predict what the other 30 would answer. And
Yeah.
so one of the companies that is interested in investing in my company is in AI.
There you go.
And that's quite frightening because you could almost see your complete demise, that you might not even be an employer or an entrepreneur or a CEO at all, because maybe AI is going to completely replace everything that I do. And I think from my perspective, that's still why I'm interested in my roots and cosmetics and toiletries, because that's something that I can't really see a robot ever being able to do, assessing fragrance, texture, your sense
Literally
of well-being,
the human
the
interface.
human
Absolutely.
touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what an amazing conversation. I mean, I'm like, I'm not entirely sure that we've gone as deep and as far into the wealth equation as we would normally do, to be honest, Susan. But it's been fascinating to listen to you express your unique twist on how you do business, and I'm sure that the people that watch this will take loads and loads from what you've shared.
I
Um,
hope so. I think, the big takeaway is try and put your health further up the list, because that's something that I'm sure I've got in common with every business owner, where it's the one thing that goes. The gym and the running and the yoga and anything like that, make that a really big priority to sustain you through 30 years of business. Otherwise you will suffer the consequences. And I think that's what where there is a huge raft of legislation for employers and how they have to help their employees. There isn't one for CEOs. If you don't speak for yourself and advocate your need for space and time and things that equate to better health, there is nobody to champion your cause. So I think that's my takeaway: is to make time for yourself. I haven't, and it's been to my cost many a time, and I have to fight against that being the priority. But really, it is the only priority. You can't enjoy your wealth if you're not well.
I was waiting to summarize by saying, what's the point of being financially wealthy if
From your hospital bed.
you are health poor, right? Absolutely. Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining in, and for coming along. I think if it's okay with you, maybe 12 months down the line, we'll invite you back, because I'd love to hear about perhaps the evolution of your business vis-a-vis AI and other things that you're discussing there. I mean, that really would be interesting. Age is just a number, right? It's wonderful as well to speak to a CEO that's not putting a label or a number, a specific sort of date in her future. I think this whole thing is so well, there's an interesting management phrase, isn't there? Loose tight, loose tight. Your business feels very much like that. It's extremely tight in its structure and its management and its effectiveness, but at the same time, it feels beautifully loose around, like, well, let's just see how we feel about that and let's see where it goes. And we're very colourful and almost flamboyant. It's wonderful. Congratulations, and really thank you for joining in. And I wish you all the best of luck. Really do. There's the L word again. So
Late. No.
thank you so much, Susan. And we'll see you again on the next time. Yeah.
Not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope your guests have enjoyed what I have to say. I'm not the Bible or the authority on any of these things. I can only speak from experience, but
You have a
it's
twist
been
on
an
it.
absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You have a unique twist on it. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.